I wish that I'd been taught when I was at school. I'm an investor, a business owner, and a money educator. Understand it better. Compound interest, cash flow, budgeting, investments, recover from debt. No one explained to me, put your money to work. It's about normalising the conversation. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Money Mechanics podcast. It's Sarah Poynton here, and welcome back to those of you that are listening. So I'm really excited about today's episode. I've got Athena Dobson from Girls in Property with us today. I've known Athena for probably 4 years nearly now, on and offline. I've been on her podcast a couple of times, which is an amazing podcast, by the way. You should definitely go and check it out. And today we're going to be talking all things money. So Athena, do you want to just intro yourself, tell us who you are, what you do, etc., and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, hi everyone. I was just saying to Sarah actually how nice it is to actually be a guest on a podcast as opposed to host. I think it's really good fun because we don't know the questions that are going to come up. So I'm really excited about today. So I'm Athena Dobson. So a little bit about me. So my background predominantly was that I was in the travel industry for 7 years. So if you ever want to come and talk to me about travel or any travel tips and ideas, I'm literally your girl. Like if you were to cut me in half all the way down the middle, you would just see travel spewing out. I literally just came back from Dominican Republic, I think a week ago now. I'm going to Greece this year, Ibiza. I've got 5 weeks in South America at the end of the year. I just love to travel. That's kind of why I started what I did, was that I could become that person that was no longer chained to a desk. So my story basically goes that, first of all, my background's in marketing. So at university, I've got a first class degree in marketing. I went straight into a well-paid job coming out of it, which was actually becoming a marketing executive for a forensic accounting firm in Liverpool Street in London. So I was on straight out of uni, I was on 35k straight out, right? And I was like, oh, I made it. This is amazing. And actually, it was incredibly boring. It was male dominated. They didn't really take any notice of me in the corner. We were definitely the first to get our budget cut. It was hilarious. But what was really interesting was I did that whole thing where I had to make the decision whether I was going to be buying a house with my partner at the time or whether we were going to go traveling. And so we decided to go traveling for a year together, which literally changed our lives because you learn about culture, you learn about people, you learn about so much. And when I came back, I decided that I wanted to take a pay cut, because you do in the travel industry. I think I went down to 22k a year or something ridiculous, and literally just worked my way up the ladder within the travel sector. So I worked for this premium travel company for 7 years, and I was literally chained to a desk. So I moved between being a travel consultant all the way up to managerial, then into sales coach. And I think I probably would have become director of that company because I was moving at such a rapid pace, and I became the top seller. But what I want to say is that for 7 years of my life, what I didn't realize was the desk became this crutch that I had. So the phone was there, the customers would come in, my identity was 3695. So I literally that's how I was referred to, put me through to 3695. And I was like, oh, this is normal. This is what we're supposed to be doing here. And then COVID hit, of course, back in, I think it was March 2022.
It was, yeah.
And 2020. 2020, I'm so sorry. Oh my God, you see? Bloody hell, man, 2020. Of course it was 2020. Yes. Sorry, my brain wasn't working then. Of course it was 2020. I knew that. So I was sat at my, I remember I was sat on my couch and Boris came on the screen, and we all remember that moment where Boris just says, stay at home.
I was sitting on my pool table. Yeah, I remember exactly the moment.
The moment, right? And I obviously work in travel. So I sat on the couch going, what does that mean? What does that, I've got a commission-based job. What does that mean? So we then got 30 minutes later, about 9:30 at night, I got a text from the company, or an email, from the company saying to me, you are furloughed until further notice. We'll be back in touch. And I was like, furloughed? What is this? What does
that mean? Yeah.
What does that even mean? It's a commission-based job. What does that mean? So it was absolutely terrifying. So nobody knew what was going on. All flights were grounded. Nobody had seen this. They were calling certain people into the office to repatriate people back to the UK. It was just insane. And so you start to question this whole 7 years of your life in this way that you've been like earning like 5 to 6 grand and in commissions like a month, and suddenly it all just evaporates. So you then for about 2 weeks did what most people did, which was just feel really sorry for myself, ate a lot of Ben & Jerry's ice cream.
Yeah.
I think Disney Plus channel came out, which was amazing. So I had a great time. But at the same time, I was like, what are you going to do with your life?
Yeah.
And I was doom scrolling through Facebook one day, and I saw this advert come up for property education, which was a 2-day course for £99. And Sarah, you might be like me. I'm that girl that when I get really, really bored, I have to do something. I have to like learn.
I am that girl, yeah.
Yeah, I have to learn. I have to do something. So I went, all right, 99 quid. Okay, let's learn about property. How hard can it be? It can't be that hard.
It's that saying, isn't it? How hard can it be? Boys do it.
Yeah, right. So
sorry to all the boys that are listening. I love you all. It's just a joke. Don't get offended.
Yeah. But exactly. So I went into my kitchen and I sat at my lounge table. I remember my partner at the time, he came in and he said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm doing like a property course for 2 days. And he's like, why? You know nothing about property. And I said, I know. I'm going to learn.
That's why I'm doing it, yeah.
That's why I'm going to learn. Why not? So I did this 2-day course, and literally they taught me how to, very loosely taught me how to set up a company and how to effectively, theoretically, turn a 1-bedroom into either a 2-bed or a 3-bed, refinance, pull your monies out, which is called the buy, refurbish, rent, refinance strategy. And don't ask me why, Sarah. It's just my personality. I went, yes, I can do that. Why not? I've done 2 days of education. I can definitely do that. So I took the money that I had saved, because I was really good at saving. So just to say, because this is money mechanics, my natural being is I didn't go through the whole spending, partying, going out phase. I was born differently. It just wasn't my thing. At uni, I wasn't that girl that spent a load of money and went out and bought clothes and handbags. I, for some reason, told myself at a young age to save for a reason for the future. So by this time, I had saved about like 40 grand, like 40K. So it wasn't bad at all. And I thought, right, I'm going to do something with this money. And I needed a 25% deposit to buy a 1-bedroom flat in Bournemouth. So I went out and I spoke to estate agents, and the estate agents, I said to them, right, I need a 1-bedroom flat in Bournemouth. But what I had learned, because I did a lot of listening to podcasts, I did a lot of free education. So all the free webinars I attended, all the audiobooks, everything there. And I learned that in order to turn a flat, because it's all I could afford with a 25% deposit, I couldn't afford a house because it's the south, it had to be a flat. But the tricky thing is with a flat is that it has to be a freehold flat, not a leasehold flat, because otherwise you have to ask the freeholder's permission.
Yep.
So I said to the estate agents, I need a freehold flat. And literally they all either laughed at me, told me that I didn't know told me that I didn't know what I was doing, refused to call me back, like literally said to me,
Okay, a very short interruption of the episode, so I want you to get back to listening. I just wanted to remind you that the Money Mechanics weekly newsletter is completely free, and we'll send this out to you every week. All you've got to do is find the link in the show notes and get signed up. When we send this out to you, this weekly newsletter is going to include things that will help you to become a better money mechanic. It could be things like what's happening in the markets, things like budgets, how that's going to impact you. And I'm also going to share a lot of insight into what I'm doing in my own portfolio and in the portfolio of the guests we've got on the podcast to really just help you understand what you could do differently to make your money work as best as it can for you. Make sure you go and find that link and get signed up.
You basically said to me, like, you don't understand this, and really made me feel like worthless, basically. And for some reason, I just said to myself, no, I'm going to hold out for this because this is what I can afford. This is what I want to do. And this is how I'm going to do it. So I stood firm, like really firm with this idea in my head that this was what I was going to do. But in the time that it took for me to basically speak to the agent to actually find something, I got called back in to the office, not to earn commission, not to sell holidays, but to repatriate people back to the UK who were stuck abroad. And I have never experienced anything like it in my entire life, where you are terrified to pick up a phone because the other person on that phone has probably been waiting for about an hour and a half to get through to you, to then cry down the phone at you because they cannot get home, and their parents are dying, or their parent has died, or they're going to miss a funeral, or they're sick, or they're a doctor that has to get back to the UK and is stuck in Costa Rica. It was horrendous. Horrendous. And you are earning, because it was commission-based, you were earning literally basic salary in order to do this job. It was literally hell, I'm not going to lie. So whilst that was happening, I still had this dream. Whilst I'm doing that full-time job, I have this dream that I want to buy this flat, and I'm saving my pennies and I'm saving them. And people are saying to me, like, you need to save this money in order to actually go and get a house, or you need to save this money in order to go and find a new thing. Don't be putting it into property. The market's not safe at the moment. We don't know what's going on. Don't do it. So I was like, okay. And then I was walking down the beach with my friend, funny enough, Sarah, one day. Her name was Sarah.
Great name.
Great name. I was walking down the beach with her because at the time, only people in Bournemouth, because that's where I was living, were allowed to walk on the beach in Bournemouth. You had to show an ID to show that you were resident of the area. Otherwise, they sent you home because of how COVID was.
Yeah.
So the beach was empty, like empty. And I was walking down the beach with her one day. She lived in Bournemouth with me. And I said to her, Sarah, I've got this vision, I've got this dream. Don't ask me why, but it's there, where I'm going to buy a 1-bedroom flat, and I'm going to turn it into a 3-bedroom, and I'm going to pull all of my money out, and I'm going to buy another one and another one. And she said to me, my dad knows someone who is selling a 1-bedroom flat. And I said, no way. I said, you know if it's a freehold? She goes, girl, I've got no idea what that even means. Like, I don't know. And I was like, right, okay. I was like, can I talk to your dad? And she goes, yeah. So she called her dad, and her dad picked up the phone, and I spoke to him on the beach in Bournemouth. And I went, hi. And he went, hello. And I said, I hear that you might know someone who's got a 1-bedroom flat. And he says, yes, I do. I own my own estate agency, which she didn't tell me, by the way. And he said, yes, there is a woman who's actually selling a portfolio. And she has a 1-bedroom flat. And I said, do you know if it's freehold? And he said, hold on, I'll call you back. And I said, okay. And then he called me back. He says, it's freehold. And I went, amazing. I said, I think I'm about to buy it. And he went, okay. And then he sent me over all the information for it, everything. And I thought I'd struck gold. I thought, she's a woman, number one. I just felt an inkling that it was meant to be. It was in a fantastic location in Bournemouth, 1-bedroom, freehold, part of it's like a house that got split into 2 flats essentially. So it was the freehold to the whole house, and then I was going to own the ground floor. And so I went through it all. So what then happened after that was we obviously went through negotiation processes, and I put my offer in. My offer got accepted. Then what I then had to do is I had to learn very, very quickly to then how to buy. I'd never bought one in my entire life. I quickly learned how to set up a company, number one, which was the easy part. Then I had to learn what planning meant, because you had to gain all the planning permissions, which, by the way, during COVID took 9 months.
Wowie.
9 months.
I mean, there's lots of areas in the UK where it's taking that now, actually, because this is just horrendous. But
it was horrendous. And because I didn't really understand it, I was just believing what I was being told by the architects and by everything. And actually, now what I know, it was absolutely a load of crap. Like, we could have got that done in like 4 months, 5 months. Oh yeah, now that I know and understand it, like, I think at the time I was so convinced that people were going to talk me out of it that I didn't tell anyone or ask
that you were doing
anyone about it. Yeah, because I thought they were going to talk me out of it. And so I kind of kept everything to myself. I didn't lean on anyone. I didn't talk to anyone. And it's something I deeply regret doing. I should have talked to more people, basically. But yes, so in the end, and I'll tell you what happened to me. 1 week before exchange, literally 1 week before exchange, and this is my first property, remember? Like, I put my money in. I think I was about like five and a half grand deep now at this point. So it was important to me. It was good money. And I remember I got a call from Sarah's dad, the estate agent who I was buying it via, and he said, we have a problem. And I said, what do you mean you have a problem? We've got like a week before exchange. He said, yeah, some sewage issues have basically come up at the property, and she wants you to pay for them or she's not going to exchange. And I was like, what? I was like, how much are the sewage issues? And he said, they're about 6 grand. And I went, what? And why? And I've got to pay for them. And he says, yeah. And he says, if I'm honest with you, Athena, she's basically like dead set in this, that she's just not going to exchange with you. So she became like a bitch, basically.
We hate her.
Oh, she was hot. She took me for an absolute ride. She found out that I was new to the game. She found out I wanted to turn it into a 3-bedroom. She found out all the information and thought, I'm going to take this girl for a ride. If she wants it that badly, we know that she's $5.5 deep. We are going to make her pay for this. So I then found out, because I got really upset by this, I then found out and called the upstairs who lived on the first floor, the maisonette. And I said, do you know about these sewage issues? And they said, yeah. They said, we've already paid our half of it. So this 6 whatever grand that she wanted, the upstairs had already paid half of it because obviously they share the cost. So she was trying to take me for all of the money, whereas the upstairs had already done that.
That is wild.
Yeah. So I called the estate agent back and said, I've just found this information out. Can you please go back and check this with her? Anyway, he comes back sheepish and goes, oh yeah, sorry about that. That's my error, not hers. Oh, you only need to pay the 3 whatever. And I was like, you are joking. Like, you are joking. And I got the best bit of advice from somebody close to me that I've ever got. And I hope I pass this on to somebody else today. And the advice that was given to me as I was crying down the phone to this person and saying, this is unfair, this is unjust, she doesn't deserve it. And they simply said to me in a really calm way, they said, Athena, do the numbers still work?
Yeah.
If you pay her, do the numbers still work? And I said, hold on a second. I got my laptop out and I put the 3, whatever it was, 3253, whatever it was. I put it in and I went, it still works. And he said, then what's your problem? Just pay numbers her and get it over with.
I love numbers so much because numbers are so unemotional and we are emotional creatures, right? And numbers never lie either, unless you lie and you put the wrong numbers in the first place. Numbers, the answer to all things sits inside of the numbers, I think.
And he was totally right. And I was absolutely fuming. Like the day I saw that number having to go through on the invoice and I saw it there, I was raging. But he was so right. And it's something that I hold to this day. It's how I now do all my deals going forward. And actually, it's how I do life. And I say to people, take your emotion out of this, take it out. Do the numbers still work? And I feel like he gave me that gift that day to pass on to others. And so that's what I did. And I bought it. So I bought it. And what was really interesting is what actually happened afterwards, which was I got all these drawings. So the drawings are ready to go. I was getting quotes for builds. Now, we should say, right, post-COVID, what started off, right, at the beginning of what I thought my numbers were going to be at the very beginning when this all started,
it was more money.
A year later, it was double. It was double. So
we had the same thing. We were doing a project right in the middle of COVID and the same thing happened.
Right. So I bought this property when I was like, yeah, these numbers are great. These numbers work. Then all the building costs, then I go back to them and they go, well, sorry, Athena, like everything's doubled in price, basically. And this really lovely builder, I remember it, this really lovely builder took me for coffee because I was so distraught. And he took me for coffee, sat down with me and he looked at my numbers and he just said, do you know what? At this moment in time, this just isn't going to work. You cannot do what you want to do, but that's okay because you can hold it, get the appreciation, get your tenant in, and get yourself on the good interest rates at the moment, which they were just about. And then later, because it's in the south, you can get the appreciation and then we can do it again. And if the planning dissolves, we'll just get it again. And he was so lovely. He gave me his time. And since then, I've gone on to do other projects with him, which is great. And actually, for some reason, I guess it's just the volatility of the market and the way that things are at the moment. It never quite came to fruition that we ended up I ever turned that 1 bedroom into a 3-bed.
It's still a 1-bed now.
It's still a 1-bed. And I refinanced it.
Right?
Yeah, but do you know what? Like, Sarah, it may, after tax, after everything, because it's now on the higher interest rate, because obviously it spiked from 1.9 to like whatever it did, 5 something. But it's actually coming back down again. So I get to refinance it in like 3 months. It's going to come back down again.
Right.
But on the highest ever one, highest interest, and my profit on it was like, it's like 468 profit, something like that. So, well, it's not, I'm not saying it's the best deal I've ever done. It's not.
I think for your first deal though, and again, like people that are a lot of people listening to this are trying to figure out their way, whether they're going to get into business, into property, into investing, into whatever, because they know they want to do something with their money, or they've got no money and they're trying to improve it. And I think understanding that the first deal isn't going to make you a gazillionaire, probably the 10th deal is not going to make you a gazillionaire. It's that line between, like we talked about earlier on, cash flow and what that is and why you need it, wealth creation, what that is and why you need it, and how you achieve action with your money that achieves both in like unison with each other. Because, you know, yes, your cash flow on that, all right, it's 400 and something pound a month, which is not going to retire you, but you've refinanced, you've pulled money out. Did you pull all of your money back out?
No.
But that's also fine, because that money's still working and invested. But you've created wealth, you've got equity, you've learned, and you're also creating cash flow. So by all counts, that's a win in my brain.
But thank you for saying that, Sarah, because this is the thing, and this is what I really want to talk about today, which is so important, which is this notion of cash flow be wealth generation. Because fast forward, just so I get there. So what I then did was I obviously ran out of money because the money went into the house, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, the flat. And people, you know, I had the whole I told you so. I had the whole you shouldn't have done that. I've gone through all of that and people doubting me. I've been there, I've done it. But what I then learned was I said to myself, well, I know I can't stay in this job and travel because I no longer trust the job. I don't trust the industry. I don't trust like the world to ever go back to the way that it was because of what I was hearing, you know, speaking to people every day about what was happening in the countries that they were in. I was like, this is the end. Like the end, basically. So what I then did was I got educated. So I went and professionally with an education company and I learned something called rent to rent, which is in very short terms where you would rent a property from a landlord, let's say for £2,000, and it's a 5-bedroom. And rather than just giving it to one family, you would give it to 5 individual people. You would then basically pay the landlord their rent and you would then take the profits between the two. So you act as like the corporate let company in between them. And I did very well from that. So I learned how to do it and I basically built up a cash pot over about like 11 months. And that enabled me to therefore leave my full-time job as a travel agent and go into property full-time. Each of those properties made me in profit about 500 per calendar month, all the HMOs. And then I picked up some serviced accommodation along the way. So I ended up on about like 5K a month with all of it going on. And I was like, right, I'm ready to leave the full-time job now. So that was all fine. But what then happened was number one, I started to fall out of love with it. And when you start to fall out of love with something, it no longer becomes aligned with you and you start making mistakes that you really, really should not be doing because you're
exact thing happened to me with rent to rent.
And you end up doing it for the wrong reasons and your heart and soul is no longer aligned with what you're doing. And it's a very dangerous, dangerous place to be. So I'll just come on to that. But so while I was doing my rent to rent journey and people asked me lots of questions about it and how I was doing it because it was going well, I started to network and I started to go to all these networking events. And when I was doing the networking events, it was just men. So the first networking event I ever went to, I'll never forget it, right? I remember I walked in, it was Progressive Property Network in Bournemouth, which funny enough, I went back and spoke out and brought all my girls with me.
I've spoken at that as well. It's a great event.
Yeah. Lee Ashby's amazing. I love Lee. But at the time, back in 2022, when I started all of this, which is why I had that figure in my head at the beginning, it was just a sea of men. So the numbers were 45 people were in that room on my first ever event, and only 3 were women, including myself. So 45 men and 2 other women. And I remember I was stood at the door.
Why do you think that is? Do you think that that's just because... I'm assuming this is an evening event, right? Do you think it's because mums are at home putting kids to bed and men are out building their businesses? Or do you think that more men are... I mean, I've definitely seen a shift in the last 11 years, like since starting properties. Like now, actually, there is rooms like yours, which is entirely women. But do you think that there's any other like deeper reason for that?
So I'll tell you what I think. I think that back in that time, in 2022, I'll tell you the conversations I used to have a lot of was I would actually meet certain couples. So I'd meet couples not at the networking events, just in general in Bournemouth. And I found out they were in property. And then I find that the wife or the girlfriend or the partner, whatever, I'd say, oh, I'm going to this event at 6:30. Why don't you guys come? And the female would always say to the male, oh, that's bedtime, you go and I'll sort them. And it was almost like she would say, you go, I'll sort them. And the guy just went, okay, sounds good, I'll see you there. And I would say, hold on a minute, why don't you come? And why don't you sort the kids? And I remember I said that once to one couple, and oh my God, they looked at me. They looked at me like, no, not like I was mad. Like I was about to start World War III between them. Like literally, because I was like, oh, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to like intrude on your personal life. But like for me, I was just like, well, hold on a minute. What's going on here? So to answer your question, I think there's definitely been a shift. And I tell you the other thing also, I believe, this is my opinion, so back in 2022, when I went into that room, I genuinely nearly walked out that room and not walked into it. And I like to think, Sarah, that I'm a semi-confident person. And I guarantee you, I know girls who are my girls in my world within my community who never, ever, ever would have stepped in a room that day. They'd have been terrified because it was a scary room. It was scary.
Same.
There was
when I went to
drinking.
Exactly that. I went to a PIN meeting in 2015, it was, and I walked in and there were two men on the reception thing, like the registration where you walk in, and they said, you're registered, go and get a drink and then we'll call you through. So I went into the bar and it was loads of groups of men all sitting around drinking, which is fine. Like there's no judgment to drink. I also drink. But I was like, I just felt really out of place, actually. Like I didn't feel like I had a place in that room. And when they started to talk to me about money, because actually at that point I was £60,000 in debt. I felt like I'd failed at life. Like really things weren't good for me. And I was trying to do something differently and trying to be, and I'm a fairly confident human being. Like I can walk into a room and be okay. But even me walking into that room then, I was terrified. And I sat down, I listened to the speaker, who was also a man, and I finished and then I left. I didn't speak to a soul because I felt like I didn't really have anything to say to that room. And especially about the topic of money and investment, because I felt like they all knew more than me and they all seemed to know each other. And it was like this quite uncomfortable space. So yeah, I know that there's clients of mine now that I work with and I say, I'll get to a networking event and they say, I can't do it. And women, there's a lot more now, like 10 years on, there's a lot more women's based events. There's a lot more.
Well, let me explain this. If you don't mind, let me explain this.
Yeah,
so I basically was in this room, right, with these guys, and they were talking to me about, is your dad in this? Is your brother in this?
Yeah.
The best one was, is your husband in this? And you're like coming along. And I was like, no. And they were making jokes about their wives being at home. And it was just very, very it just didn't sit well with me. So I came away from that event and I got in my car and I just want to be really clear about this. I did not sit in my car and think I'm going to take over the world. And I did not sit in my car and think I'm going to create one of the UK's leading female networks within property. No, those thoughts did not go through my head. What went through my head was a simple term, which was, that's a shame, right? I drove home saying, that's a shame. And so what I then did was I went and I searched for female property networks. I searched for female podcasts, female networks, anything. And I searched and I searched and I searched. And back in 2022, I can tell you, because you can go research it yourself, in 2022, there was not one UK podcast, event, network, anything for women in property.
No, there wasn't.
And I thought, that's interesting. Now, I tell you what there was. There was something called Female Invest, which was two best friends. The girls. Now, they're actually just one now, not two, but there were two at the time. And they're based in New Zealand. They're Kiwi. So I started to tune into their podcast because I thought, okay.
I think Female Invest is Scandinavia, and Girls That Invest, Friends That Invest.
Girls That Invest.
Simran and...
Thank you.
I can't remember her friend, but Simran, basically, who is the girl that has continued it, she was Kiwi, but there was like Female Invest and Girls That Invest, both of them were New Zealand and Scandinavia, but there was nothing here. No. There was nothing here.
Right. So they're Scandinavian and they're Kiwi. So in the UK, there was nothing.
Yeah, correct.
So I remember I was sat at lunch one day. It was around my birthday. It was September 2022. And I sat with one of my very good friends to this day, Sophie Foote, who you know very well.
I do know Sophie, yeah.
And we were at lunch and I told Sophie about what had happened. And I said, it was a real shame, Soph. It's a real shame. And Sophie looked me dead in the eye across the table. And I'll never forget, she said to me, Athena, I think we should start a podcast and we should become the first female property podcast. And I looked at her, I paused, and I burst out laughing at her. And I said, do not be so stupid. I said, we can't start a podcast. And she said, why not? And I said, who's going to tune into us? No one's going to want to hear from us. No way. And she said, they are. All we need to talk about is our stories. All we've got to talk about is what you've just been through. And the fact that, for example, I could have told a story that day, right? I had to go do a viewing on a HMO to rent one of the rooms out. The guy that came was one of the scariest men I've ever met. I was on my own doing this viewing with him, right? And I remember I was on the staircase and I said to him, after you, I'd like you to walk in front of me, not behind me. And he said to me, what, so that you can stab me and kill me from behind? And he said that to me.
Oh my God.
And I didn't chuck him out in that moment. I then decide stupidly to go to the third floor of this five bed HMO at the top. Conversation. And I text Sophie literally text her going, if I don't call you in 10 minutes, call the police. Like I text her going, if I don't call you in 10, and she says, okay. And she waited, and then I didn't get back to her within 10 minutes. And so she didn't call the police, actually. She texted me going, I'm about to call the police in 5.
Are you alive?
Call me now. And then I literally called her and I went, I'm okay. But he ended up being very weird, very, very, very weird. But the thing is those are the stories that we talk about on the podcast, right?
That story, really interestingly, and, there'll be people listening to this and thinking, how does this relate to money? And I'm going to tell you how this really important topic relates to money.
I'm also going to talk about money in just 2 seconds.
So, and like all of this is so important. And I know there'll be a lot of men listening to this thinking, oh my God, this is a girl pro episode. And yeah, a little bit it is, but I'm a girl, so that's fine. But to the women listening to this, what Athena's just said right there is something I want to kind of pause on and just talk about, because I remember very similar situation. I went to a viewing in Luton and I lived in Milton Keynes at the time, and I drove all the way to Luton. And I knocked on the door, and it was to basically go and meet a vendor to talk to them about selling their house. And I walked in the front door, bearing in mind that at the time, I didn't have a team of people. I'd just driven myself to Luton. I hadn't told anyone where I was going because I was building the business on my own. My husband was at work, and I didn't think to tell him that because I was running the business and he had a job at the time. That's how we worked. And I didn't tell him when I was going on viewings. I just said, I've got a viewing today. I didn't ever share my location or anything like that, because it never up to that point occurred to me that I was at risk. And I hadn't told my friends because they were all at work. And so I went and I knocked on the door, and this guy opened the door. Fine. I've been on viewings with men before. Not a problem. Like, I'm fine in the company of men. And I walked into this house and he shut the door behind me, and there were 5 other men in the house. And I shit my pants, because I was like, all of a sudden, I'm on my own in a house with 6 men that I don't know, and nobody knows where I am. And it was in that moment I was like, you need to take more care around people knowing where you are. You need to have a process for this. And actually now in the business, we have a process. If any of the team or any of the girls go on a viewing, because obviously most of my team are female, not all of them, but most of them, if you go on a viewing, I want to know when you're there, who you're meeting, the names, the numbers, all the things. Like, we've got like a reporting system in the team so that no one's ever at risk. Because at the time, and it might have been the same for you, Athena, I was just hustling. I was doing what I thought I had to do to be able to earn money, because money was the thing that I was striving for. And I did put myself into positions where I actually now, 10 years later, think, you absolute Wally. And I did this viewing with these men. And to be fair, they were very respectful, and they stayed in the living room, and the guy that owned it, he walked me around the house, and it was all very pleasant. They were very lovely men, all of them, but they might not have been. And it hadn't occurred to me up until that point, as a woman trying to build a business, and yet in a very male-dominated industry where a lot of the time the people that I was meeting were men selling houses, or men, trying to rent me houses because they were the landlords, because the men are the people that own assets and all those sorts of things. Yeah. Actually, to earn our money, we have to pay attention to making sure that we're okay. And I think it's a really important detail.
Do you know, it is, Sarah? And if I just quickly, by the way, I'm really conscious of time because I really want to explain about this whole notion of cash flow v wealth and kind of what I've been able to do. So I'm going to do that. But just really quickly on this notion, if anyone's listening to this, right, let's just go to what Sarah just said. So yes, I was in a point in my life where I was hustling, right? I was hustling and grinding. And do you know one thing I did, which I don't recommend anyone ever do this ever. And I did this. I was at a meal with my mum and my partner at the time. I was in an Indian restaurant in Bournemouth. I left that meal. I left it mid-meal because somebody said to me and sent me a message saying, can you do this viewing? I'm 30 minutes away. And it was about 9 o'clock at night. And I was like, oh my goodness, am I literally about to go and do this viewing at 9 o'clock at night? And I went and I did it. And I went and did this viewing and left the meal because I was hustling and grinding. And they still didn't go forward with it, even though I was like, oh no, they're going to go forward with this. And they didn't. And I thought, never, ever, ever do that again, ever. Because you know, there are so many more important things than just making money. And at the time I lost complete sight of me, my values, my worth, who I am as a person. And I became somebody that I'm not. And I really regret that. So if anyone's listening to this day, please know that the right things will come at the right time, and make sure that you eat and drink water and sleep and be safe always.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Like this, I have had like windows of time in the last 11 years where I've, you know, I'm a business owner. Sometimes cash flow's tight. You've got to hustle. You've got to do the, you know, and I hate the hustle mentality. But what I accept as an entrepreneur is that actually I have to work if I want to change something. I have to accept that that's how it is when you are the boss, right? But I've definitely had periods of my life where I've completely forgotten myself in order to balance the financials. And it's, with hindsight, it's easy to sit here and say, oh, don't do that. Like, don't lose yourself. Don't forget your values. Don't align with people that don't align with you. Make sure you go into the gym and eating well and drinking water and sleeping 8 hours a day and all the things that we're counting your calories and making sure you're eating enough broccoli and all the other shit that we're all supposed to do to stay alive, whilst also earning the money. That balance is really hard. And I don't have children, right? So if you chuck children in the mix and a marriage and a dog and all the things that we also have got going on, parents who are poorly, all this stuff, that is actually a really hard balance to strike. And similar to you, there's been windows of time in the last 11 years where I've gone so far towards earning money because I felt like I had to be in that space at the time that I've forgotten my friendships and I've forgotten my family in some cases, and I've not gone to the birthday meal because I was doing the thing. And actually, with hindsight, I wish I hadn't done that. I don't regret it because I try not to have regrets, but in earning your money, trying not to lose yourself is something that I wish more people paid attention to, because it's hard to do, but really, really important. Because making money for the sake of making money at the detriment of yourself and your life and your relationships isn't worth making the money. The money just becomes empty in the end, in my experience anyway.
Totally agree. So just coming back to this story then, so I can then lead on to the bit. So basically, we then started the podcast, right? So we started the podcast, which, by the way, now, I think I looked at it the other day. I think we're sitting on like 160 episodes, 75,000 downloads, starting on the 15th of January, 2023, right? I release every single Monday. I get various guests on. Sarah's obviously been on, had loads of guests, and it's just fantastic. But what I then learned was basically that there was a need for this in this industry. We needed a female podcast, and we needed a community, and we needed events. So I therefore then did events. So the first event me and Sophie ever put on, which was without even incorporating a business, it's called Girls and Property, right? That's the name of it. But we essentially just put our hands in our own pockets and put on the event so that we could bring women together. And we managed to sell out 60 tickets for these women. So we didn't make any money out of it. In fact, I think we made like a loss from this event of our first one. But we just wanted to show that there are other women in this industry that are coming together. And funny enough, Sophie then, after this event happened, actually looked at me and said, Athena, I don't want to do this anymore. There's no money in it. There's nothing to be made from it. I've got 2 kids. I want to go and do all these other things. And I said, do you know what, Soph? I said, that's completely fair. You know, I totally get it. And she said, look, we had a good run with Girls and Property. Like, it's okay. Like, you know, we set out, we achieved, and it's fine. And I said, well, actually, I don't think that that's true. I think that there's Girls and Property is just starting. And I think we have a mission, and I think that we need to do this. And Sophie said, well, do you know what? Take it, Athena, run with it, make it yours, make it what you want it to be. So I incorporated it on October 2023. I incorporated Girls and Property, so it's not even that old, bless it. And since then I've trademarked it, so trademarked Girls and Property. I've turned it into a paid membership community. I've turned it into events. I've literally just announced today that I've just sold out of my retreat, which is 60 days in advance, with 80 women coming from there. And let's just say there is definitely profit within that part of the business now, which is great. There is definitely profit there, I can tell you that. So, it's amazing. And it's incredible that actually I've managed to, people often say to me, Athena, how do you create a community? How do you create a sellout event 2 months in advance? And I'm like, every single time the truth comes back to one thing, which is you become the essence of what it is that you are creating. So there is no Athena over here and Girls and Property over here. I become one. Mm-hmm. I become the center of it. So you become like a magnet of it. And one thing I always love talking about is actually how to build a community first before you sell anything. It's one of my favorite conversations, because I'm like, if you actually want to sell well, you build a community first and then you create wealth creation from there. So to bring this back to money mechanics, I then created, Girls and Property. Now, Girls and Property is my cash generator. It's how I make money. I've got rid of my rent to rents. My rent to rents I've got rid of. I don't love them. They're gone. But I've created and I've kept all of my buy-to-lets. So I've got my buy-to-lets that I've got that basically just, is wealth. It's a little bit over here. Girls and Property over here. Now, what I've now learned to do, because I started to generate profit within Girls and Property, which is cash flow, is I started to learn how to be tax efficient and how to start moving money into pensions. Like you can contribute, I think it's up to 60,000 into your pensions. You can do ISAs, you can do stocks now, you can do shares. Sarah, you're going to be very proud of me. I have now officially started moving into 212 trading app, and I put some money into some stocks. But I've done some index funds. I've done some single stocks. I've worked with a financial advisor, so I've actually put some money into a pension. I've done like a SIP. So my money is now spread across lots of different places. And people keep saying to me, Athena, what's next? What's next? Because, property is an interesting game at the moment. Interest rates are a bit interesting at the moment. I'm struggling actually to sell some flips and my own residential. And so now my attention, now that I'm beginning to learn about diversification and money and how money works, I'm now moving into buying businesses. And I'm now talking to the girls in my community going, who else is interested in buying a business? Who else is interested in investing? And they're like, me.
Everyone.
And do you know what's interesting?
Imagine, yeah.
Do you know what the most interesting bit is, right? And I've learned this is the most interesting bit, right? There will be people out there like yourself and other people that you get on Money Mechanics podcasts who have got decades of experience in investing, decades of experience in this. That's not me, and I'm damn proud of it. I've got about 4 years experience in actually developing a business, growing a business, 6 figures now plus, which we'll talk about in a second, about what that actually means, and then going on from there. And I'm saying, well, hold on, I'm going to learn how to do this. Why don't I learn? And as I show you my journey and I document it, I'll bring you along with me. And
that's how I started my education company. That's exactly where Kajia Wealth came from, which I know this is the Money Mechanics podcast, but most people know that my property and investment education business is Kajia Wealth. That started because I started to document what I was doing in property, and then people would say, how are you doing that? What is that thing that you were telling me about? And I started a community, and then we started a mastermind, and then we closed the mastermind because when COVID hit, because we had like an in-person one, took it into an online community, built that. That's been incredible over the last few years. I kind of took a year off last year, actually. I'm very privileged, I suppose, now that I got to a point where I didn't need to grow anything last year. I wasn't very well, so I took the time to just get better. And now we've launched a new mastermind. But that education business was born very similarly to Girls in Property. It was born by accident, actually. Never really anticipated that I'd have an education business. That wasn't really what I wanted to do. If you'd have told my teachers that I'd become a teacher one day, they'd have laughed for sure, because I was just the naughty girl at school. But community and female community in the property space, I think, is incredible. And, there are like shoot up groups, and the space itself, anyone who's thinking about doing it, do it. Find a community like Girls in Property, like Kajito, like whichever. Obviously, Athena and I are biased, obviously, but like find a community that will help you understand these core things, like buying businesses, investing in stocks and shares, having property and assets that cash flow. Like, these are such important, basic, in my opinion, basic financial things that we need to know about. And I didn't learn it until I was well into my 30s, similar to you, right? Like, it's so important that you guys know about this. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, Sarah, I don't even understand what these words mean, get in touch with me, get in touch with Athena, like, talk to us, because we can help you to understand it and then do it as well, which is the most important thing. Understanding it's one thing, but doing it's another.
And it's so important for women to do this. So basically, what I've actually spoken to a lot of people about this. So I'm going to be speaking about it for the first time on your podcast. I'm very much moving into kind of more of a girls and prosperity angle here, because I want to extend beyond property, right? Property kind of like got me to the dance and got others to the dance. But I'm actually like, well, hold on. Why shouldn't we be learning about investing? Why shouldn't we be learning about buying businesses? Why shouldn't we be like, do you know the amount of women that come to me who have just been through a divorce, for example? You go, Athena, I've literally just gone through a divorce. I've now got 200K in my bank, or 100K or 50K, whatever it may be. And they say, I need you to help me to learn how to become financially literate. I need you to teach me how I can be using my money effectively.
Yeah.
And my God, there are other strategies other than property in order to do that with. And this is what I'm learning myself. I'm learning that, hold on, I can either buy property, or I can go and buy a nursery or a care home or a construction company or a scaffolding company or a painting decorating company. And isn't that really
I really want to buy a laundrette. That's right on my like vision board. I really, really want to buy a laundrette.
Hilarious. Laundrettes and nail bars, questionable, but yes, absolutely.
They're all cash businesses, right?
They are cash. They are cash. But you know what? Like, this is what interests me. And you know, the biggest conversation I have with people, coming back to the conversation of cash flow be wealth generation, is I will have conversations with people where they will come to me and they will say, Athena, I want to leave my full-time job. Right? It's the best conversation. Yeah. Athena, I want to leave my full-time job. And I say, how are you going to do that? And they say, I'm going to get into flips. And I say to them, okay, explain that one to me. Explain that. Because what I want to say to you all, my biggest tip to you all is, if your sole purpose is to leave your full-time job, the first thing you need to do is replace your salary, right? It's not just about trying to get loads of lump sums in and then divvy it out. You need to have it's like getting your foundation right. You need to have recurring income, recurring sort of like build from the bottom and work your way up. Because as soon as you have that, you can then do that. So if you're going to do flips, you need to have a recurring like pipeline. You need to have that.
This is quite interesting, because I agree with you. I have a slight tweak on this, because I think this all depends on your risk profile as a person.
Yes, so I agree with that.
I'm definitely the sort of girl that if my salary was £60,000, let's just say that was a figure, I was earning 60 grand a year in my job. Actually, my take home is probably about 40 grand a year after tax and all the other stuff we have to pay, right? So I'm getting 40 grand. If I could do a flip and put 40 grand in the bank and live on that 40 grand and pay myself my wage, in my brain, I've replaced my income, and I then need to work my ass off to get to a point where in year 2, I need to find my recurring income. So I'm probably more of a risk taker than you, though. And that's probably based on a few things of experience, because I've just been doing it slightly longer, the size of projects, those sorts of things. In the early days, back in like 2015, I'd have never thought like that. I'd have thought exactly like, I need to replace my income first, and then I need to think about the bigger stuff. Whereas now, because my risk profile's changed and my financial position has changed, like I am in a privileged position that actually I've got unencumbered houses. I've got all these different things. Yeah. Your risk profile would dictate it. Athena's right. In order to be mortgageable, in order to pay your bills, in order to those things, it's important that you've got an income that you can rely on every single month. And flips in the early days doesn't do that. That's absolutely true. But, the chunks of money do help with that. But yeah, you're right, I think.
Well, it's both are right. Both are right. It comes down to, do you know what the word is? Resources. Like
100%.
You just have to sit there and say, what resources have I actually got at the moment in order to take my next move? And I think that people don't people rush, and my advice to you is don't rush. Sit quietly. Don't listen to outsourcers. Don't compare yourself. Don't feel like you're behind. Just sit yourself and go, right, what have I got? Even do a spider diagram and say, right, what are my assets? What are my things? What is my income? What have I got? And then move from there. And then you'll be able to do that. So again, talk to Sarah, talk to me. I can talk to you about this all day long, about looking at that in your risk profile. Sarah's 100% correct. And then from there, you can move. And by the way, FYI, it doesn't have to be a property strategy. It could be that actually you move into, let's just go for it, the property world in inverted commas, but you become like a surveyor, or you become an EPC regulator, or you get you have your own business within the property world, and then move into the assets. So I just want everyone to really think about cash flow v wealth generation today, because it's so different. And I'd just like to give one example here, Sarah, if I may, because I think it might help people. You may. And happy to talk to anybody about this. So again, I'm at the beginning of my tax journey. I'm at the beginning of my understanding how tax works. How to be efficient in tax. How to be efficient in tax. I'm learning, right? So I learned this. Okay, so first of all, do not ever, ever, ever just let your accountant tell you what you should and shouldn't do, is my first bit of advice. Yeah. You should be try to become tax literate and try your best to actually understand how tax works. Because I tell you this, my accountant came to me and she said to me, your tax bill for this year is going to be $8,500. You need to pay $8,500 in tax. And I looked at it and I went, nah, don't think so. That doesn't look right to me. And I said, and she says, well, this is what it is. And I said, well, if I look at this, you haven't done this, right? Which would make me tax efficient. So number one, believe it or not, guys, are you ready to literally like hold the seat of your pants of something? This is going to blow your mind, because I know what you're about to say. Okay, so do you know the first thing she didn't do? And you're going to go, what? How did she not do that? Obviously, did not put through 12,570 in a salary. Number one. She didn't even put through a salary for me. Number two, then didn't even put through some extra of the dividends that I had actually proposed. Didn't even do that. And then number three, I said to her, okay, you see the rest of that, which I think was like 24 grand in profit that was actually on the sheet. I was like, well, hold on a minute. I'm just going to put that into a pension. Like, I'm going to set up like a SIP and literally move my money into a pension, and therefore my profit is going to be like £3 on Girls and Property. This is such an important thing, especially when you start to make money. But can I make a point? Because this is really important, really important. Bit of advice, guys. Please do not do what I did. Please do not do what I did. I made one mistake. I made one really, really big mistake. And in my accountant's defense, I agree with her with this. I was so busy making money and I was so busy focused on marketing and selling that I forgot to actually do my books. I forgot to reconcile. I forgot to keep up to date and all of this. And so what ended up happening was I reconciled within like a week. And within that week, me and the accountant both went, oh shit, you actually made some decent money, right? And I went, oh crap. Okay. And I had 1 week. So get rid of it all. To speak to my 5 days actually. I had 5 days to speak to my financial advisor, who is God's gift. He's amazing. Mark, shout out to you. And he literally said, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this, Athena. I don't know if we have the time to do this. And I said, Mark, we are doing this. We are moving this money because I'm not losing this. And he went, okay. And you know, we did it. So the deadline obviously was the 31st and we managed to do it. And the money got transferred over on the 30th and we did it. And so the money went. With accountants, and again, there'll be accountants listening to this. This is not me being horrible to accountants, but we are responsible, whether you're in business or even if you've got a job and you're investing in property or investing in stocks and shares, you actually need to do your own self-assessment every year, regardless. So if you've got any sort of investments and you are employed, this is relevant to you. Because I know some people will be listening thinking, oh, this don't matter to me because I don't run a business. It does matter to you because you've got investments, right? Or you're hoping to have investments. Your accountant's job is to file your accounts and to, in most cases, follow your instructions, actually. We think that our accountant's job is to advise us on how to be as tax efficient as possible. It isn't. A tax advisor's job is to be a tax advisor. An accountant's job is to be an accountant, to balance the books, right? So that's the first thing. I, 2 years ago, fired my accountants that I'd been with for 10 years because I asked a question one day and I was given an answer, and that answer ended up that I had a 6-figure tax bill in 2023, right? Ooh. So 2023, 6-figure tax bill.
again, with a week's notice, because we'd left it till the last minute. My fault, hands up, my fault. But it was based on my income that I'd taken in that year, because they told me I could take up to a certain level and that everything else would kind of, and I thought I was expecting like a 50K-ish tax bill, and it wasn't. It was over 100.
Wow.
So I panicked, obviously, because where do you pluck 50 grand from with a week's notice? Not many people can do that. But then when I actually went back into all of and I sat like for 3 days, day and night, like every single transaction, like, what is this? Where's that gone? What's that? What? Basic accounting literacy, because I'm not good with accounts. And in the end, we managed to legitimately, legally, not even grey, just reallocate my DLA, because what they'd done is put so much stuff on my DLA, which is a director's loan account, for those of you that don't know, which basically meant the company owed me money, because I'd paid for, I don't know, I'd bought a roller banner with my own money, and actually it should have been the company's money, but I had the wrong card on me or something like that. So what they'd actually done is they'd misallocated my DLA. It was nothing to do with my income, what I'd actually taken out of the business. They'd put things in the wrong place. And because it had gone onto my DLA in the wrong way, it looked like it was a personal expense, when in fact it was business expenses. And that year, my tax bill went from what was 6 figures on the original document down to around 40, which is what I was expecting. So a 40 grand tax bill is hard enough to swallow, right? And I'm efficient. I put all the money where I want to put it, and it's dealt with in the way it should be. But if you do not challenge things like tax, like accounting, like these, even investments, right? When a financial advisor is saying, consider this, do that, it's okay to challenge. It's okay to say, are you sure that's right? It sounds like it's not right. And I want to check that it's not right, because actually that ability to challenge has saved me literally hundreds of thousands of pounds over the years, in tax, in fees, in advice, in poor advice, and putting money in the wrong places. And I think what Athena's saying is absolutely right. We have to be confident enough talking about the money, talking about the tax, talking about the flow of it all, to be able to confidently sit behind your own challenges when you've got questions to ask, when things are not quite right. It's so important.
Yeah, exactly that. And the thing is, if anybody wants to talk to me, who is going through things at the moment, or of course to Sarah as well, just DM us, just let us know, because we're always happy to just chat. You can find me at Girls and Property on Instagram, and Athena Dobson. But it's important. It's important to have these conversations, both men and women, because these conversations aren't being had enough. And I've gone through, only in my short period of time of 4 years, I think I've gone through like 7 accountants, because my accountant now is incredible, by the way. If you need a recommendation, if anyone needs a recommendation to an incredible accountant I've been with them 2 years and I've not cried once. So that is my measure of, no stress. Everything's done in advance. They don't leave anything till the last minute. They're incredible. So if anyone does want a recommendation, Sarah and her team are out of this world. I love it. Another Sarah. I love that.
Yeah. Another Sarah, who's just got an incredible team as well. So, okay, we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours, but I think what's important at the end of every episode, what we like to do is to kind of wrap up. So I've got 2 things to ask you, right? The first one is, what's advice or a tip or a hack or something like that around money that you know now but didn't know when you were carrying debt, figuring out your way, all of the things that, like, where money's been hard? What's something you know now that you wish you'd known then, that you could give as a tip or a hack or a piece of advice to people who are still trying to find their way to make their money make sense?
Okay, so this answer is going to be different for everybody, right? Because it depends again on resources and where you're at with things. So for me, I think that I've always known, or I've always seen people who are, let's go, wealthy with money in a certain way, where I see a lot of them be very clever and using money to work for them. And I think what I did was I became quite lazy with my money, and I focused elsewhere on almost trying to make more money rather than focusing on the money that I already had. And I think what I wish I'd have done is focus on the money that I already had. So for example, I had for the longest time, Sarah, I had 50 grand just sitting in premium bonds doing diddly squat, right? Diddly squat.
Safe, but not
safe.
Effective.
Very safe, but not very effective. So again, it depends on your risk appetite. You have a look at it, you do whatever suits you. Personally, for me, I wish that I'd have just taken a bit more time to stop trying to make more money and just look at the money that I already had and to go, how could I use this more effectively to actually work for me? So for example, I've only just now opened a 212 trading account, and I've only just now started investing in my own stocks and, the S&P 500 and, FTSE 100 and all of that. And I wish that people kept saying to me, you need to do this. And I just kept making excuses why not. And that saying of, even if you just put £50 a month away, £100 a month away, £20 a month away, compound interest is genuinely a really, really big thing.
The most magnificent thing.
It really is. Genuinely really big
thing that exists. Right? I truly believe it. It's great.
And so my advice would be it's always important to make more money in life. I get it, right? I've been there. But actually, I wish that a year ago, 2 years ago, I would have actually really started looking at this and just started the process. And actually, if I ever have children one day, start the process for them early, because it will be the best thing you ever do. And actually that moment where I wasn't going out clubbing when I was 18, 19, and I was saving my money in, by the way, a savings account that probably had about at the time, 1.2 something. If I'd have just understood and learned how to put that into compound interest, Jesus Christ. And actually my mission, just to say my mission, therefore, as a result of this, is I really want to educate young women. My passion is I want to get into schools with girls in prosperity. I want to educate. I want to get them to understand how money mechanics, as your podcast says, actually works.
This is why I wrote the book. It's why I started the podcast, for exactly this. Because, Athena, when did you do your interview with me on your podcast? Must have been 18 months ago.
Literally. Yeah.
Maybe 18 months, 2 years ago. And in that conversation, we had a conversation about stocks and shares, dividends, S&P 500 and investment. And the thing about this is that we can know the information and still not do the doing. And like what Athena's just said, she started a 212 account now. But because of that fear of not understanding, the fear of not even necessarily the fear of loss, because if you're an investor anyway, you've got a level of risk appetite that you understand that there's a risk of loss. But it's the actual physical, how do I do it? What button do I click? Where do I go? What's the safest route? I understand there's risk associated, but what's the safest route to do it? And that is why I wrote the book, because I was the same. I knew that I should invest in the stock market. I knew that I should buy crypto because that was inside of my risk appetite. I knew that I should look at dividend paying stocks for probably about 5 years before I ever did it. And once I started to do it and realized just how simple it is and how accessible it is and how low risk it can be if you're not stupid in your choices and you actually think about what you're choosing, I feel pissed off that I missed out on that 5 years. And I feel pissed off that when I left school at 18, no one said to me, put £10 a week away and let it compound over the next 60 years. Because right now, if I'd have done that when I was 18, I'd be retired now, and I'd be retired a very wealthy woman. And whilst I am a wealthy woman, I still work. I still have to work because my cash flow, my wealth creation, and we've done well, but I still have to live on my money every single month without withdrawing it from my wealth. So, I'm annoyed that no one ever taught me that. And that's the mission of Money Mechanics, the same as you with Girls in Prosperity, is we have to have these conversations more. We have to be able to open it up, talk to kids about it, talk to older people about it, talk to parents about it, talk to everyone about it, because it's so important.
Exactly that.
So the last question I have for you, as everybody knows, at the end of every episode, we have a question that was left for you by our last guest, and then we will ask you for a question for our next guest. So the question that was left by our last guest was, if you had £1,000 and you were to give it to a teenager today, in today's market, 2026, you were to give a teenager £1,000, what would you tell them to do with it? Again, this is not investment advice, ladies and gentlemen listening. This is just Athena's ideas.
£1,000. What would you do with it? Interesting.
For a young person, someone who's like 18, 19, 20.
So, okay, here's my idea. This is my idea. First of all, okay, let's be risky.
She's coming in swinging.
Let's be risky. Okay, I'm going to say, let's tell them to... Okay, here we go. Let's tell them to take £500 of that money, and let's tell them to put it between the two indexes, well, the compounds. Yep. So let's put it in the S&P and let's put it in the FTSE 100. So let's put the 500 in there, 250 in each, and let's just watch that accumulate for them over a period of time.
Yeah.
So let's do that as number one. And then what I want them to do is I want them to then use the other money, £500, to create some sort of a campaign, letter campaign, leaflet campaign, marketing campaign, advert campaign, something around that. And I want them to go and reach out to all of the CEOs that they know who are running startup companies. So startups. And I want them to go and I want them to offer their services to shadow them and work alongside them for a year. If they're 18, maybe we could get them some sort of a discounted minimum wage potentially, or if not, just for free, even just for 6 months for free, to learn all of the ins and outs of that business. And I want them to deliberately do this with a startup, because when you have a startup, the startup CEO has their hands in every single element. They have them in the marketing, operations, whatever it may be. So if this person is shadowing them, they're going to quickly learn what to do, what not to do, as it were. And I'm thinking that we could either use that 500 to then use it for those paid ads and things to get a really good one, and kind of do it in that way. And if they shadow them for 6 months, or if they shadow them for a year, they are going to naturally become entrepreneurial, because they are going to learn what it takes, whether it's good or bad, to run a successful startup business. And then from there, what they can do is they can then go from there and meet other people and go for dinners and keep a bit of the money back, keep a bit of, let's pull 100 back. So 400 in marketing, 100 back to pay for coffees, to take people out for coffees meetings and offer coffees and meetings and that type of thing. So I'm going to do a 500 for investment. I'm going to do 400 for marketing and 100 for meetings.
Amazing. I think if it was me, I would probably do a split again. And I think I'd probably do a half and half split, the same. I'd put £500 I'd probably put into dividend paying funds as opposed to the S&P, because whilst the S&P is great, FTSE's great, really diversified, quite low risk, there are funds that also pay dividends. So I would probably choose a dividend paying fund, but for the same reasons as what Athena's just said. And I think now, today in 2026, I would say to them, similar to what you've just said, is to take the rest and turn it into some sort of marketing campaign or leaflets or whatever, to go and approach small businesses to find out how they need help introducing and implementing AI into their businesses. And actually, this is a conversation I had with one of my mentors not that long ago. And I asked him, like, what would he do if he was starting a business now? And he said that. And I was like, that's funny, because we'd had the conversation in the office about it. How can a mechanics business implement AI? How can a nail bar implement AI? How can a pancake house implement AI? Because right now in 2026, that actually is one of the biggest markets. And if you've got your money invested over here and you can then use some cash to create a business that would allow, again, young people are going to understand this tech stuff way better than the older people that are running these businesses, to create a services-based business that creates cash that you can reinvest. I think that's what I would tell a teenager to do nowadays. That's,
perfect.
I think,
I love that.
Okay, so very last question. What is your question for our next guest?
Okay, so I'm going to do something which I'm going to do something a bit different, because I want to know more about the person when you ask this question. So it's more of a personal question more than anything else. I want you to ask them, what scares you?
Ooh, great question.
I want you to ask that question to them. What scares you? Because you're going to get really under the hood with that person.
So we have a couple of minutes, but what scares you?
Oh, God, what scares you? Actually, no, Sarah, what scares you? Let's let people actually know. You, the Money Mechanics podcast host, what scares you, Sarah?
So it's a really interesting question. I'm really honest about this with most people. One of my great, other than like losing my family, and those things they scare the shit out of me. But in terms of like in a professional sense and in a personal sense, one of my biggest fears is going back to being in the debt that I was in. And I remember, like, even saying it, my stomach tenses. I remember it was horrendous. I hated it. And I've worked so hard to get out of that space so that never happens to me again. But genuinely still, there's a fire in me, and it's part of what drives me, definitely. There's a fear in me that, and I'm scared that I do not want to go back to that place. So that definitely scares me, for sure. I'm not bothered about the reputational stuff. Like, if I fucked up my business to a level that I lost everything, I'd say, okay, well, I made some bad choices, but I learned a lot along the way. The thing that would be like that I would be scared of is waking up with that feeling again, and how heavy that was for me at the time, because I would hate it. So and that's what ultimately what drives me forwards, and it's what drives me getting out of bed every day. When, I have got a wealthy position in my life. I probably don't need to work as hard as I do, but that scaredness of going back to feeling like that keeps me motivated and energized every single day, because I'm not ever going back there, ever. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
But this is the thing, and then you learn about the person underneath the hood. Like, I think that's so important. And just really quickly, like, when I got asked this question once on a podcast, they said to me, "What scares you, Athena?" I sat there and I thought, what actually scares me? And for me, it might be similar to you, Sarah. I don't know. I'm 34 years old without, I've just broken up for my partner of 5.5 years. I don't know if like the whole
sorry.
Oh, bless you. I don't know if like the whole child thing's going to happen for me, for example. I don't know if I'm going to become a mum. I don't know what my future holds. And for me, that really scares me, because I almost have this feeling like, when you feel like you're failing, like as a woman, like what a woman is meant to want, what a woman is meant to desire. And for me, that scares me.
I remember that when I was 35. I went through a really similar thing. Like, I'm 42 now. And, I don't have children. But I remember being like 35 to 38. And I, funnily enough, had this conversation on a phone call with my best friend this morning. We were talking about this very thing. Around the age of 35, I started to think, I've fucked it all up, because that's not happened for me. And what if that's the point? Like, what if that's the point of everything? What if that's what we're supposed to do? And I remember being in that headspace. But what I can also say is that the world and the universe will give you what is absolutely meant to be, in my experience, and stuff will work out exactly as it's meant to. So try not to be scared about that.
Nah, all good. Amen. I love that. But thank you for inviting me on the podcast. Pleasure.
Thank you for being here. It's been an amazing conversation. I'll obviously make sure that the links and everything, if anyone wants to get hold of Athena, you can Google her, Girls in Property. You'll find her, because she's everywhere. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. Thank you so much. And I will speak to you soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks, guys.
No worries. Bye. Thank you so much for getting to the end of the podcast episode. I really hope that you enjoyed it. I just wanted to take this opportunity to remind you that the weekly Money Mechanics newsletter is available to you completely free. This is a newsletter I'm going to send out every week to just give you some ideas around what's happening in the markets, what's happening at a global level, what's happening at a lot more local level, so that you can better understand what you can do with your money to make it work for you for the future. I'm also going to share in the newsletter what I'm doing in my own portfolio, just to give you some insights into what my ideas are, why I'm making the decisions that I'm making, in the hope that it will help you to make those decisions in your own portfolios as well. All you've got to do is find the link that's with this episode, hit the link and subscribe, and that newsletter will start to come out to you every single week. I'd also really love to take this opportunity to invite you to drop me a review. I love the opportunity of getting to share these podcast episodes with you. It really helps me to better understand how we can do the best job that we can here at Money Mechanics if you tell us your feedback. So drop us a review, tell us the sort of guests that you want, talk to me and connect with me on Instagram, talk to us on YouTube, wherever you are hanging out. Tell us how you're finding it, and we can make this the very best podcast it can be. Thank you again for being such a valued listener. I appreciate you all, and I'll speak to you soon.